to say that this is a moment for me because whenever I speak, I feel, honestly do feel, that my teachers are nearby. You've all had teachers of one sort or another, and you sometimes maybe even feel their presence. Myself, I feel them coming through me. Sometimes I even feel like I can see them. The things I do, it's as if I'm doing their gestures. I said in the film, I talked about my mother's gesture. And it's really true. I'm a continuation of her teaching gesture. That's just what I am now. If you're a mother, a parent, a father, you might see that in a child you have, or you might be an expression of your own ancestral line, too. So I want to say I'm here not to tell you anything, really. I'm a teacher. Sometimes I'm traveling with this film, and people say, well, you're a fairly decent teacher, and you've been teaching for so long. What do you think is the right thing to do about education? And, of course, alarm bells go off at that point. Oh. I can't really say, because if you're an educator, you've seen the next big thing, I'm sure. Every 5 or 7 years, the next big thing comes down from the policymakers, and it's going to save us all. It's going to close the achievement gap. The children will all be beautiful, and their teeth will be shining. It's going to be wonderful. And it may work sometimes. It may give you a benefit sometimes and sometimes not. But I've learned, I guess, over 3 decades that, and I'll say this, maybe it's kind of heretical, but I'm not sure there is a next big thing. Maybe there's no next big thing. Maybe the next big thing is really a small thing. Maybe that small thing is simply the interaction between a teacher and a student. One student at a time. One classroom at a time. 1 year at a time. In the heart of the person in the room. I don't know if you can have a policy that can be universal enough to change everybody's heart. But I've seen great teachers take policy that wasn't very good and make it work and make the children blossom. And I've seen great policies that in the hands of people who didn't know what they were doing turn out to be a horrible mess. So for me, in my experience, it comes down to being the teacher in the classroom. Whatever the policy. I mean, you're very brave to go to work some days. You know how difficult it is for you. We all know how difficult it is. You're educators. Not everybody's aware of it, but we do know what you're working under every day. And that you cannot be supported alone. None of us are alone. David McConville talked about interdependency. In my school, if I'm not on the right side of the secretary, forget it. In my school, if I'm not pleasant to the custodian, forget it. If the cafeteria help and the bus drivers aren't really friends of mine, you know, I won't make it as a teacher. We're totally, completely interdependent. Not one of us can do it alone. Not one of us. I've not seen one that can. So with that, I'll just share with you a little bit. I'm going to try and be brief. Just a couple of stories that are not in the TED Talk about the World Peace Game. And you've seen the film about the game. It's a gigantic plexiglass structure, towers over the children most of the time. And it's 4 levels: the outer space level, the aircraft level, ground and sea, and then the undersea level. And so what has happened in the game is things sometimes go horribly wrong. There are mistakes, or they just don't work out. And I've learned over time that every disaster is a blessing. Every disaster is a chance to do well. Every disaster is a chance to get it right. And the disasters actually increase the ability of the students to do well. We may not be allowed to do that in regular under testing systems and testing constraints. But I'll give you an example. There was a student in my class, his name was Pablo. Pablo was a little heavier fellow than most. And he was, had his hair kind of stuck up, and he had big, thick glasses, and he talked very slowly, and he talked in a kind of a monotone. And so we had the students in the class, his classmates had to have a lot of patience with waiting for Pablo to say what he had to say. Pablo had something, I could tell. He had something in him that needed to come out. You know, as a teacher, you have an intuition about a student. You know there's something there and you want to bring it out. I asked Pablo to be a prime minister in the World Peace Game. I said, Pablo, would you take the lead? Well, and this took a couple of minutes. Yes, I will do that. So Pablo's in position, and of course his teammates are it's going to take forever. Pablo, at the beginning of the series, the session, lasts about 6 weeks. Pablo made, on his first attempt as prime minister, he stood up, I'm Pablo, so-and-so, such country, and these are my declarations. He makes one move. And his style was a game piece. He could have done that. He makes one move. So the kids on his team are like, oh, man. By the end of 6 weeks, something happened to Pablo. I've seen this happen before a number of times, maybe 5 or 6 times in 35 years now. And when it happens, I can see it coming. I haven't seen it every time it's happened probably, but I've seen it 5 or 6 times. Pablo, after 6 weeks, he'd been through the game, he reached a point where something changed in him, and I could see it coming. He stood up, he began to tremble. I saw it. His eyes got really wide behind his thick glasses. His spike hair seemed even spikier somehow. He walked up and he said, I'm Pablo, and I have these declarations. And he made about 22 moves in 3 minutes, all on every level. He ran the entire game. He got the entire equation of all those complexities at once. I've seen it happen. A kid will get it, we should say in the 62, would grok it at once. He understood it, he saw it, I said, Pablo, you can see. He turned to me and he says, I can see everything, Mr. Hunter. Pablo, you really understand? I understand everything. And he really, truly seemed to get it on the cellular level, the same way that David in the film, when he's speaking about Sun Tzu, seems to get it on a very deep level that is very difficult to test for. I don't know if you can devise a test that will show that kind of understanding. We call it self-evident assessment. My second story, and then I believe I'll stop, is about Zed. I'll call him Zed. He was a fellow who had, shall we say, an extremely high opinion of his own abilities and intelligence. Extremely high. Much more so than he had of others around him. And there was a little girl, Secretary of State across the way that he had a kind of crush on. And he wanted to impress her, politics and romance. So he decided he was going to launch an ICBM. And that should show her, I think. But he was going to launch it as mercenaries who surrounded his oil reserve. Now, he could have asked the mercenaries what they were doing and what they wanted. He could have negotiated. He could have opened a channel of communication. He could have asked an ally where they came from, who their supporters were, to please have effect in the situation. No, he's simply going to shoot, as little boys do sometimes. And he was asked by the UN, he was asked by several other ministers from different countries, do you know, Zed, what you're about to do? If you miss, this could be an ecological disaster. If your ICBM hits that oil reserve, it's going to be a huge mess. I know what I'm doing. And he fired, and he missed. And it was the weather goddess gleefully got up and put a huge piece of black crepe paper on the aircraft level. Yeah, about a third of the world's under pollution now, so what are we going to do about that? And there was such gloom and despair that settled over the room. We were just, I can't tell you the feeling of failure I had as a teacher. I had built this situation and allowed it to run out of control, out of my control, and the students are failing. They're not winning. But what happened next showed me that as a teacher, there are effects of your teaching far beyond anything you can see at the moment. The students went into a mode I've rarely seen. I call it hyper-collaboration, super or hyper-collaboration. Even the fellow who found himself shocked at his big mistake was sucked into it, and they worked on that problem in a team mode that you could not believe happened. It was astonishing to see. They became unified as one whole creature suddenly. And the problem solving, the critical thinking, the creative thinking went through the roof. Because of that disaster, that mistake that I had allowed, it appeared, it seemed a great learning occurred. So you can never really be certain that it's a wash, that your effect wasn't felt somehow. So I'll finish with this last little bit. You're under a lot of pressure. You have been for some time. it's been really hard. Some of you have lost along the way. We've lost people along the way. People have got transferred, moved, have left the profession altogether. These things have come under various policies. And I would just say that even so, I'm still optimistic. The World Peace Game makes me optimistic, but you know, when I leave here, I go back and do bus duty in September. Some of you might do bus duty? No? Okay, yeah. Cafeteria duty, no. At our bus duty in our school, Agriculture Elementary School, we have a traffic circle in front of the building. Every morning I'm out there and I open the door for kids go to school. I open the door and I said, "Good morning, welcome to Agriculture School." I said, "Here's another chance for greatness," I'll say to them. They'll hop out, sometimes one will hop out, sometimes two, sometimes 6 or 7, depends on the van. So, and I say, "Here's another chance for greatness." And it occurred to me, did I really mean that? And I thought, you know, I really do, because any one of them can change everything. So every day I'm seeing, we have 550 kids in our school. I don't open the door for all of them, but I'm seeing in a day 550 chances for greatness every day. Now, if you think about every school in our state, think about every state in our country, think about every school in the world. How many chances for greatness? How many chances do we have to get it right every day? And with that thought, I think we might have a chance. This kind of meeting where educators get to speak on the ground to each other. There's not a policy group telling us anything. It's us talking to ourselves. This kind of thing, I thank the providers, the sponsors, Sensible City, and the people who put this on. Because how often do we get this chance where it's just us talking to each other about what we do? And then it goes from here and makes some effect. It's not just we got our, you know, we teachers get together, we start whinging and growling, oh, you know, I got this problem with this kid's. No, we get to have some effect. It's live stream that's going out, they provide. You just affected the whole world by this discussion. So I want to thank you for that. There's a film that tells the whole story of the World Peace Team afterwards. I know you've been sitting a long time, but I would like to invite you into my classroom. You're welcome to see the real stuff happen. And of course, there are teachers better than me doing this, but you might see, oh yeah, I did that, you do that, we all do that. And if you see a reflection of yourself, it's great, because it's really about you and not about any one teacher. Thank you.